WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's May Day in Dakar, 1 o'clock in Praia. Good afternoon, and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. Mohamedou Ngom, called Falba, has been stripped of his Senegalese parliamentary immunity. Police in Liberia invite embattled Speaker Fonati Kofa and other lawmakers over Parliament building fire investigation.
An attempt to arrest any of the CDC lawmakers, you mean you arrest the entire CDC. We are aware that the bogus charges, the bogus investigation that are being conducted, but no iota of transparency.
United Nations mission in Guinea calls for clarity on electoral timetable and disappearances.
Everyone
was calling for a sincere and open dialogue. The recommendation aligns with this approach, so we hope that the various suggestions will be met with attention and that people will finally come together in the spirit of the original intent to discuss a proper timeline and move towards elections.
And Africa CDC expresses concerns over U.S. withdrawal from WHO, fearing impact on health programs across Africa. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Augustine Coley with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast and welcome to our listeners within and across the sub-region. This edition begins in Liberia, where the Liberia National Police has invited the Embattled House Speaker Fonati Kofa and several other lawmakers in connection with the ongoing investigation of the fire outbreak that engulfed the country's parliament building on December 18, 2024. The Liberia National Police communication to the House of Representatives addressed to Speaker Richard Cohn of the majority bloc listed key lawmakers, including Embattled Speaker Councillor Fonati Kofa, Representative Dixon Siebel, Marvin Cole, Frank Focal, Priscilla Cooper, Abu Kamara, and Jacob Debe, all of the minority bloc as persons of interest. Grace Joshua in Monrovia has the details.
The Liberia National Police has stated that given the sensitive nature of the investigation and the need for transparent proceeding, they have identified members of the House of Representatives as persons of interest in the ongoing probe and will summon them for questioning. The police assure the public of their commitment to conducting the investigation professionally while respecting the right of all individuals involved. Police Inspector Gregory Coleman, during a recent press briefing, revealed that investigators has gathered sufficient evidence pointing to arson as the cause of Capitol building fire on December 18, 2024.
So at this point in time, we are definitive about calling the arson. We have identified people of interest in this investigation. Those people of interest are going to be reached, and in the case where they do not show up, they will be arrested.
Meanwhile, the national chair of the opposition Congress for Democratic Change, Anthony Augustus Kawo, has declared that the party will resist any attempt to arrest its lawmakers in the House of Representatives. Anthony Kawo's statement followed reports of plenty arrest warrants for lawmakers allegedly opposing the controversial removal of embattled Speaker Councillor J. Fonati Kofa.
An attempt to arrest any of the CDC lawmakers, you mean you arrest the entire CDC. We are aware that the bogus charges, the bogus investigation that are being conducted, but no iota of transparency.
Embattled Speaker J. Fonati Kofa, responding to the police communication, stated that since the unfortunate fire incident, he has consistently cooperated with the investigation and ensured the cooperation of all individuals under his employ. He emphasized his absolute innocence in connection with the events. For West Africa Democracy Radio, I'm Grace Joshua in Monrovia.
Well, in Côte d'Ivoire, around 100 young people from the locality of Bété in the east have been arrested by police. According to a statement from the prosecutor of the Abenguru Court of First Instance, these individuals are implicated in the arson attack on the Gendarmerie Brigade in the area. Recently, youths in Bété who were angry about gendarmerie observation posts along the town's access routes expressed their frustration through protests. Imo Edit has the detail.
In a statement, the prosecutor of the Abenguru Court of First Instance announced that a judicial investigation has been opened against the arrested individuals. They are accused of involvement in the disturbances that occurred in Bété earlier this week. The charges include disturbing public order, illegal possession of weapons, intentional destruction and damage to public buildings and property, among others. The statement revealed that the incident began during a routine check last Monday when members of the Bété Gendarmerie Brigade immobilized a motorcycle whose rider lacked the required administrative documents. Later in the day, the youth leader of the locality, along with 6 others, went to the brigade's offices to demand the return of the confiscated motorcycle. According to the prosecutor's statement, several individuals armed with projectiles, machetes and rifles later showed up at the brigade chanting anti-gendarmerie slogans. The youth eventually forced their way into the premises, vandalizing furniture, computer equipment and vehicles before setting the building on fire and fleeing the scene. In response, the gendarmerie called for reinforcements, which led to arrests of around 100 individuals and the siege of multiple weapons. In the aftermath of the unrest, the local prefect imposed a 72-hour curfew from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m. Local authorities have stated that this measure could be extended if necessary.
Imo Edit with the details of our Abidjan correspondent Albin Adet's report. Let's take you to the Sahel region, where the Malian Ministry of Mines has introduced a tougher measure to combat illegal gold mining, a practice causing severe environmental damage. The decision was announced on Wednesday during a cabinet meeting. As a reminder, in 2024, authorities dismantled around 10 illegal mining sites and seized various materials. Nadedetete has the details.
In a statement, the Ministry of Mines highlighted the growing threat of illegal gold mining fueled by the rise of unauthorized groups. According to the ministry, the majority of those engaged in this activity are foreigners using sophisticated mechanized equipment. The ministry underscored the significant environmental risks, including water pollution caused by toxic substances, irreversible damage to biodiversity, and health hazards for nearby communities. Additionally, the practice results in substantial fiscal losses for the Malian state. The statement further noted that illegal mining activities not only fuel criminal and terrorist networks, but also intensify social tensions in affected regions. In response to the growing challenge, the government has announced a comprehensive action plan to strengthen enforcement. The plan includes legislative reforms and enhanced international cooperation to address the issues effectively. In 2024, intensified efforts led to the closure of 61 illegal mining sites and the seizure of equipment, including 286 excavators and 63 vehicles. These measures aim to curb illegal mining and mitigate its damaging effect on Mali's environment and economy.
Bamako correspondent Aliyu Cham's report, read by Nadedetete.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Elsewhere, Nigeria's National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, NADAC, has destroyed counterfeit, adulterated and unregistered food, drug and cosmetic products worth approximately 1.3 billion naira, equivalent to around $1.6 million in a public exercise held on Thursday at the Kuje dump site in the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. The agency's Director General, Professor Mojisola Adeyeye, emphasized that the destruction was part of a routine operation aimed at eliminating substandard and dangerous products from Nigeria's supply chain. Usma Umar has more in this report.
Professor Adeyeye, represented by the National Agency for Food, Drug and Administration and Control, NAFDAC Director, Dr. Festus Ukadike, stated that similar exercises are conducted annually across various zones of the country, depending on the volume of seized products.
It is a way of sending a very strong signal to the cartels that are involved in the production or importation or sales and distribution of substandard and falsified medical products and unwholesome processed foods. There is zero tolerance to substandard and falsified medical products and unwholesome processed foods. Nigeria will no longer be a haven for dumping these products.
The Director General of the Standard Organization of Nigeria, SON, Dr. Ifeanyi Okeke, praised NAFDAC's efforts and urged manufacturers and importers to comply with regulations. Represented by SON's FCT coordinator, Gamagira Mohammed, Dr. Okeke emphasized that both NAFDAC and SON are readily available to guide stakeholders on adherence to product standards.
At any given time, we come across items that are particularly regulated by NAFDAC. We will get across so that at least in line with their act, they can build the appropriate thing, and it's vice versa.
In 2024, NAFDAC seized counterfeit and substandard food, drugs, and cosmetics worth over 120 billion naira, approximately $144 million. The destroyed items included psychoactive substances, antibiotics, expired food products, and unsafe cosmetics. Additionally, NAFDAC's crackdown uncovered and targeted over 6,000 bags of rebagged rice in the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. The agency is stepping up its enforcement efforts to address the increasing public health risks associated with counterfeit goods and is actively investigating the cartels behind these illegal activities. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
Now, in Guinea, the United Nations mission, which visited the country in December 2024, has made its report public. In the document, the UN mission calls on the Guinean authorities for clarifications regarding the electoral timetable and the cases surrounding the disappearances of political and civil society figures. The report has received mixed reactions from Guinean social political actors. Echiatis reports.
In the report, the UN envoys recommend a two-pronged approach to support the transition process in alignment with efforts of the international community. The mission urges the Guinean government to take urgent steps to ease tensions and build trust, particularly by providing clarifications on the transition timetable and addressing the issue of false disappearances of civil society figures. Mohamed Cisse, spokesperson for the Hope Party for National Development, has welcomed the conclusions of the report.
Everyone
was calling for a sincere and open dialogue. The recommendation aligns with this approach, so we hope that the various suggestions will be met with attention and that people will finally come together in the spirit of the original intent to discuss a proper timeline and move towards elections without the referee acting as both judge and player.
Supporters of the junta, however, believe that the UN envoys are out of touch with the realities in Guinea. Sheikh Traore, Vice Coordinator of the Synergy General Mamadi Doumbouya 2025, shared this view.
The United Nations is completely out of sync. I don't know what game the United Nations is playing. As for the second part, I respond that, as a Democrat, I'm sticking to the statement made by the Attorney General. He declared that there is no evidence supporting the detention of these missing individuals within the official jurisdiction of the Republic.
The Guinean government spokesperson has promised to provide a statement in the coming days after the report has been reviewed by the head of the government and the president of the transition.
Echiatis with the details of Conakry correspondent Channel Alpha Ibrahim Ambadet's report. In Burkina Faso, the legal team of Guy Havicam has raised serious concerns about what they describe as systemic failures in the justice system handling their client's case. Though in the first anniversary of the lawyer and politician's detention, they issued a statement condemning the delays and irregularities in the judicial process. The case, which revolves around allegations of an attempt to destabilize state institutions, is now expected to go to trial between August and September this year, 2025. Christopher Aticho reports.
On January 24, 2024, lawyer, politician, and civil society figure Met Gay Hervé Kam was arrested at Ouagadougou International Airport. Detained at the state security headquarters, the coordinator of the Sense movement was initially released on May 29, only to be rearrested the same day by the officers from the Gendarmerie Research Division. Gay Hervé Kam was presented to the investigative judge, who charged him and placed him in detention at the military prison and correctional facility. Following an appeal from his lawyers, the Court of Appeals ordered his release on July 10. However, 2 days later, the military prosecutor initiated another procedure for the alleged attempt to destabilize the institution. The lawyers stated that, like the first case, the second one was also lacking any charges that could suggest Metcam Gay had participated either as an author or accomplice in the offenses he was accused of. On August 7, another appeal was filed by the collective of lawyers, who argued that the detainee should have been released within 15 days by September 2, according to the lawyer, if there was no response from the Court of Appeals. Moreover, the lawyers expressed regret that their client was not heard on the substance of the case until January 20.
That's Christopher Teacher with the details of Ouagadougou correspondent Martin Kabat's report. You are listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Here is a reminder of the top stories. Mamadou Ngom, well known as Faba Ngom, loses his parliamentary immunity over allegation of money laundering. Police in Liberia invites Mbato Speaker for Nati Kofa and other lawmakers over Capitol building fire investigation. United Nations mission in Guinea calls for clarity on electoral timetable and disappearances. Still ahead in the news, Africa CDC expresses concerns over U.S. withdrawal from WHO, fearing impact on health programs across Africa. We also have a guest interview and a sports update. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Man, and thanks for staying with us. That's a reminder, we're streaming live on YouTube at WADR News, on Facebook, WADR English Service. Now, here in Senegal, Mamadou Ngom, also known as Faba Ngom, has been stripped of his parliamentary immunity. Recently, Senegal's ACHOL committee concluded its work on the MP Ngom, also known as Faba Ngom, regarding the potential lifting of his parliamentary immunity. The Ministry of Justice request linked to money laundering allegations, which has sparked controversy. Aissata Tall, president of the Takuwalu Senegal Parliamentary Group, and Faba Ngom's representative stated that the charges were unclear. The case involved several high-profile individuals and reached a decision point during an upcoming recent parliamentary sitting. Meanwhile, the annual conference of chief prosecutors was held on Thursday in Senegal. The theme for this year focused on revitalizing sentence enforcement offices and addressing the issue of prison overcrowdedness. The event was presided over by Senegal's Minister of Justice, Ousmane Diagne, who extensively addressed the issue of unpaid fines since 2022. Here is an excerpt from his statement.
The
Ministry of Justice, which I oversee, is committed to implementing concrete actions through a series of reforms and initiatives. Our goal is, on one hand, to establish a criminal justice system capable of controlling the prison population and improving detention conditions, and on the other hand, to enhance the justice system's contribution to covering public expenses. Despite the numerous legislative and regulatory reforms of recent years, prison overcrowding remains a structural and human challenge due to persistent delays and bottlenecks in case processing. Strengthening the judiciary role and protecting public resources and its active contribution to the national economy requires revitalizing the fine recovery process, as well as confiscation and other procedural fees. The proceeds from these should become a significant revenue source for the state budget. Recent studies conducted under my leadership by the Directorate of
of Criminal Affairs, led by Zadia Grasse, shows that between 2020 and 2024, the Dakar High Court alone has uncollected fines totaling over 3 billion CFA francs. This not only highlights the potential contribution of the judiciary to the national economy, but more importantly, underscores the agency of, more importantly, enforcing court decisions.
Sur l'urgence d'une exécution effective des décisions.
Senegal's Minister of Justice, Ousmane Diagne. And now to health matters, the African Union's health agency, Africa CDC, has voiced concerns over the potential impact of the United States withdrawal from the World Health Organization, WHO, on public health programs across Africa. Shortly after taking office, U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order to pull the U.S. out of WHO, citing discrepancies between U.S. and Chinese financial contributions. However, Dr. Mamadou Ndiaye Maktal, a public health expert, emphasized that Africa must strengthen its own health systems and not rely solely on international cooperation.
African countries must avoid relying solely on international cooperation. While such support is important, it should not be the primary lever for addressing challenges. Instead, African nations are working to achieve greater autonomy. Cooperation is also taking place at the continental level, as seen with the African CDC, and at the sub-regional level. For example, the West African Health Organization, WAHO, is spearheading critical initiatives to encourage countries to strengthen epidemic surveillance systems, enhance outbreak preparedness, and ensure effective responses to disease resurgences. These issues have been carefully addressed over time to build resilience. Countries that have signed onto the international health regulations are required to meet certain obligations and develop specific capacities. Additionally, the WHO Africa region has developed a technical guide for epidemiological surveillance to ensure that all stakeholders in the health system, including communities, are well prepared and trained to respond to potential epidemics. This guide outlines 8 core functions, with the first being the early detection and identification of threats. It also emphasizes the importance of involving communities in both preparedness and response efforts. Ultimately, it is up to African countries to take ownership of their preparedness by financing these efforts, establishing emergency funds, formalizing rapid response teams, and integrating epidemic threats into their national security policies.
Dr. Mamadou Ndiaye Maktal is a public health expert.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
We take you back to Liberia, where the police has invited the Mbatu House Speaker Funati Kofa and several lawmakers in connection with the ongoing investigation surrounding the fire outbreak that engulfed the Parliament building on December 18, 2024. Our guest is Dr. Aaron Weir, a political analyst who speaks to WADR about the situation.
Coming out of an election year where the votes were split right through the middle, you want to be very careful how you approach this, because there's sensitivity on both sides. Those most culpable held to account. The other side is sensitive that part of this investigation might be a form of witch hunting or trying to find someone to blame. So there has to be a level of conflict sensitivity by the police in how you approach investigations. It's a high-stake politics. A lot could go wrong if this is not managed well. So I will say this is good, the promptness by the police to get at the bottom of this, but you have to approach it with some level of conflict sensitivity.
The police have now invited the Mbatu Speaker Funati Kofa and 6 other opposition lawmakers as persons of interest in connection with the crime. How would you describe such a move by the police?
If the police is acting on rare evidence and have facts, they have information that someone like me do not have. So I can just say, well, if that investigation and bringing on people of interest is informed by what they have access to, that is good. But then again, I would caution a certain level of conflict sensitivity here, because these are senior Liberian politicians that come from a political party with supporters who will get in the street in defense of their lawmakers. So the public has to be convinced, the trust and confidence in the work of the police has to assure the public that all of this is acting in the right interests of the Liberian people. Study shows that there is very little trust in the police. Study shows that there is also very little trust in the criminal justice system in Liberia. So the mistrust between the public and these critical national institutions run very deep. And so matters like this, it could get worse if the due level of sensitivity are not been considered.
But the Imbato speaker, Kofa, has constantly called on the state to invite international investigators into this case. What do you think could be the reason for his statement?
Well, I think he's right there calling on international partners to be involved to look at the evidence. He's basically saying we need a fresh pair of eyes, outsiders, to look at this evidence and to be involved in the decisions that are being made. He's in a very subtle way questioning the objectivity of the police and questioning the political neutrality of the police in handling this matter. That feedback is going back to this political party and going back to partisans who will easily join him to say this is a witch hunt. So it's all about how do you use this kind of high-profile political investigation to rebuild trust in the public, to rebuild trust between key institutions of government and the public.
What do you think will be the outcome of this case?
One outcome is it could go terribly wrong. There could be a verdict forwarded to court to say, all right, the investigation showed that a number of persons in parliament are the instigator of the fire incident at the legislature, and that could be rejected as a political witch hunt. Another outcome could be that there is a meeting of minds behind the scenes and it has happened before to say, let's forget about this, because if we come up with the findings of this, it could be disruptive to the current peace and stability. These are the two likely outcomes. I reject the second one because we've been down that road before. Let bygone be bygones. Let's forget it and move on. We've been there before. I think we should find the actual culprit, and because it is sensitive, the process has to be very transparent about what really happened, and all the key players need to be involved. All political parties, key political parties with constituents, so that they believe that this is not some witch hunt. They believe that it really happened, and there are people who instigated the fire incident. So these are the two likely outcomes based on my study of recent public investigation. Maybe there's a third outcome here. Just blame ordinary Liberians who may have been taking instructions from people in a higher up. It could be. And so let's blame people who are not in senior positions in government.
Dr. Aaron Weah is a political analyst. Now, in the world of sports, Senegalese soccer star Sadio Mane, now thriving in Saudi Arabia with Al Nassr, has dismissed rumors linking him to a return to European football with Inter Milan. Following Al Nassr's 3-1 victory against Al Khali, Mane addressed the speculation during a post-match interview. Mane's response signals his commitment to Al Nassr as they aim for domestic and regional success, leaving no room for doubt about his immediate future. That's how we conclude this edition of Newslink on West Africa, Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Sheikh Njai for the technical support. Coming up at the bottom of the hour is our security and governance program in the Sahel with Abdullahi Hassan. I am Augustine Kali. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our